I'm only the curator now. I made the collection, but I gave it to my 4 children some time ago, and that's why it's called the Butler Family Collection. I bought a house in Chelsea in 1958, which had a lot of shelves, and I had no objects and very few books. And my friend Nicholas Thompson was buying some beautiful famille verte, and he recommended to me that I should fill my shelves with objects such as his. I therefore went to Sotheby's and I found a box containing, quote, 6 old pieces of old Chinese porcelain, one of which was this beautiful bamboo-shaped wine pot in apple green. And I bought the box load for £15 and carried them off home. And then I thought I'd just ask 1 or 2 people what it was, and nobody could tell me. The 17th century was completely ignored until very recently, because the museums and collectors had always focused on the things that were made for the palace, the imperial wares, and the imperial factories were closed in 1608 because the Ming dynasty ran out of money, and there were 75 years in which there were no imperial factories, and the best potters and painters had to transfer to the private sector and find their own markets, which meant that they produced an extraordinary variety of very beautiful things, which were not recognized until recently, and which it's been necessary for me to try and arrange a sensible dating, because it's only by having a great many pieces that one can, in fact, date them properly. This piece I bought when I became a little braver in the late 1960s. By far the most expensive piece that I'd bought at that time, at £325. And it's probably unique. It's now certainly famous. And when the great collector, Sir John Addis, who gave a wonderful collection of 15th century ware to the British Museum, visited my house in Geneva, he said to his companion, you know, these late things, they're really quite good, because he was only interested in the 15th century. I had a sabbatical year at Harvard in 1970, 71, and continued my collecting there, which was a very good place to do it. And I was sufficiently confident of my knowledge about the dating of the pots that I had, I think about 80 at the time, to volunteer to do a small seminar for 6 or 8 students from Harvard who were interested in the subject. This piece I bought in a Japanese junk shop in Boston. It's well painted and shows a well-known scene, and it's the first piece of painted in underglazed blue and enamels that I bought. This man is called Liu Hai. He was one of the immortals, and he had a magic toad, a 3-legged toad, which could only be tamed with money. And if it wasn't tamed with money, it was tended to make people go mad. I was made an undersecretary in 1974, just in time to do the so-called renegotiation of the terms of entry into the EU. I was going to The Hague every couple of weeks, and of course The Hague was full of Chinese porcelain, and I went with £300 in my pocket, which was all one was allowed to take abroad at the time. And I would always come back with a box full of mostly blue and white, and the best pieces would go into the collection, and the rest would go into Sotheby's, thus enabling me to keep buying away. In 1979, the Hong Kong Oriental Ceramic Society were planning the first exhibition which had ever taken place of 17th century porcelain. And I think Julian Thompson told them they should come to me because I would be able to lend them one or two pieces. When they arrived, they looked round and said, well, we didn't know any of these things existed. And they put into the exhibition about 30 of my pieces. These larger pieces were in the Hong Kong exhibition. The president of the Hong Kong Oriental Ceramic Society told me that he believed that this was the most beautiful landscape on Chinese porcelain. This bowl is very rare indeed, because it's the beginning of the revival of underglazed red, which had been very successful in the 15th century, but then they lost the knack. And the 16th century emperor kept asking for underglazed red things, but they never managed to produce it. And this was the first really successful piece in the new era, made in somewhere around 1660. I was very pleased to be invited to give two lectures to the Oriental Ceramic Society of London, one on the end of the Ming and the other on the beginning of the Qing. And another piece of good fortune was that in March '84, and the lecture was to be in April, Trustee's in Amsterdam sold 8,000 pieces which had been salvaged from the South China Sea, and there were two pieces in the ship which were dated 1643, so the last year of the Ming. So we had a mass of things which I could check against the draft of the lecture, which I'd already sent out to Julian Thompson and others, and it confirmed my dating in every respect. All the pieces in this cabinet were under the sea for 340 years, and were salvaged by Captain Michael Hatcher. We call it, therefore, the Hatcher wreck. It's quite interesting that some of these pieces actually show signs of having been eaten by sea animals, and some of them are extremely rare, never been seen anywhere else, like this wine pot, which doesn't have a lid, as you can see, and a pipe in the bottom runs all the way up to here. So you turned it over quickly, and then you could pour it normally. I couldn't pour this one normally because the spout was blocked by sea animals, and the object was filled with 17th century sea. A lady from Virginia called Julia Curtis was sent to me. She was so enthusiastic about the Butler pots that she suggested to the curator of the museum in Leeuwarden, the Prinsessenhof, that they should have an exhibition of our pots. And I was duly invited to do so, and I wrote the catalogue with the curator, Barbara Harrison. And that exhibition went on to the Musée Royal in Brussels and the National Museum of Wales. So I now had a good start on being recognized as a serious expert on the 17th century. In 1985, I came back to London and bringing the porcelain with me, of course, and I became an investment banker and had a lot of other jobs as well. I was doing a deal and the president of the bank asked to see me, and I was shown into his waiting room, and I saw these two bowls on either side of his fireplace, one with cigarette stubbed out in it. And I looked inside, and the design is exactly the same as on a bigger bowl in an American museum. So I said to myself with great excitement, I bet that if I picked this piece up, it would show an 8-character mark. And here is the mark, same mark as on that, 1672. And so I thought there was a pity they should be exposed to such danger. And I said to my friend, the head of the corporate finance department with whom I was working, I think you should tell the president that these pieces are quite old. It'd be a pity if they got broken. And you could say that if by any chance he was prepared to sell them, I'd be delighted to buy them. A month went by, and my friend said in answer to a question, well, as a matter of fact, the president is having them examined by an expert. So my heart sank because I thought, they'll tell him that they're extremely important pieces. And 2 months later, I said to my friend, what happened when the expert came? And he said, well, to tell you the truth, he said that they were of no interest and of no value. Now, I think that the expert was a crook and knew perfectly well what they were and wanted to buy them. However, he didn't succeed in his aim, and when I signed the deal with the president a month or so later, I was handed as a present a cardboard box, a long cardboard box, which chinked. And so I knew what was in it, and I thanked the president warmly. And I carried the box carefully out into the courtyard and got into my car. And the driver drove off, and I opened the box, and there these two bowls, priceless bowls, were sitting without any packing at all. So I wrapped them in my dirty shirt and my pajamas and got them home safely to England. The collection was by now beginning to be famous. There's an organization in Washington, in America, called Art Services International. They came to me in the late 80s and asked us that I would do an exhibition in America. When I was doing the catalogue of the 1990 American exhibition, I was being advised by Margaret Medley, and she assured me that any piece with a man with a walrus moustache and dots for eyes was very early Kangxi, that's to say in the 1660s. However, I now know that they were all made after 1690. So she did cause me to miscatalogue one or two pieces at the end of the 1990 catalogue. The American exhibition, in the end, went to 13 museums in America, including the Frick in New York, which was a very prestigious venue. One of the consequences of the Shenzhen exhibition was that nowadays the auction houses and the dealers are correctly dating these things from the middle of the 17th century. And the Palace Museum in Beijing have produced a large book on the first three Qing emperors, in which 55 pieces are attributed to the Shenzhen period. So my campaign for recognition of Shenzhen has, I think, succeeded. The Shenzhen exhibition went to Honolulu, Dallas, and Charlottesville, Virginia, where again we had an international seminar. And on the last evening, Julian Thompson and Caroline Butler had a conversation about where we should have another one. And Julian suggested we should go to the Shanghai Museum. So when they reported this to me, I thought it was a brilliant idea, and I wrote a letter to Wang Qingzhen, who was the director, who had already been to Dorset to see the collection, and who had become convinced that it was high time to try and persuade the Chinese experts to regard the 17th century as something important. As a consequence of a joint exhibition in the Shanghai Museum, I went 2 years running and sat in the antechamber of the storerooms and chose the Shanghai Museum's pieces. We needed to have 66 pieces each. And Wang Qingzhen told his staff that I was the expert on the 17th century. And indeed, he wrote something rather flattering about me in the catalogue. After the Shanghai exhibition, the number of people from all over the world wanting to see the pots increased markedly, and they were then still housed in the 3 outhouses behind my house. As these rooms were a bit scruffy, we decided that really we needed to have a proper museum. And we set about doing that, and my youngest daughter, who is to be the future curator of the collection, has been working with me on this. And the museum is now nearly complete, though there are more books to come in and so on. But we think that it does display the porcelain in a way which enables those who don't know anything about it to enjoy the beauty of the things, and those who do know something about it to study the collection and the pieces in the right order. And so I am hoping that the next generation will enjoy the porcelain as much as I do.